Welcome back to the TWP podcast. I've got with me today somebody I've been watching for an extremely long time. He and Adam from Psych Substance are the two people who motivated me to start making psychedelic content myself. This man right here, Tom, psychedelic pioneer, one of the loudest voices online for psychedelics. I'm very excited to talk with you today, Tom. Well, to start it off, I'm going to probably ask you a question you've been asked 1,000 times. How did you begin your journey with psychedelics? What were you like before using psychedelics? And how did taking psychedelics kind of change you?
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So I'll start off with who I used to be. I think before my first psychedelic experience, which was actually a moderate dose of mushrooms. I couldn't even tell you what the dose was, but it was 5 individual dried mushrooms. So you'd probably know better. But at this time, I was kind of I don't know, just a daily stoner, drinking, lost, depressed, anxious, and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like once I had that first psychedelic experience, which mind you, I didn't do it thinking this is going to be this spiritual experience because I heard it from Joe Rogan. This was before Joe Rogan, right? So I didn't have any education. This was how old was I? I was 21. How old am I now? 30. This was 9 years ago. And me and my friend had it, and it was we thought that we're just going to have another drug experience. Oh yeah, we're just trying this new thing, like MDMA sort of thing. And it ended up being a whirlwind. It was kind of like the heaven and hell sort of trip. The first half was oh my God, this is amazing. There is no time. Kind of looking at nature, and it was kind of opening up my mind to all these new realities and kind of helping me, I don't know, just I guess appreciate nature more. Because at that time I was just obsessed gamer, didn't really care about nature, not going outside.
Yep.
And then the second half of the trip, it went really dark because I didn't realize how sensitive you are on psychedelics, and I think I played Machine Head or some really brutal heavy metal band because I was a metalhead at the time, and of course it was just and it just fucking shot all this anxiety, and then I was kind of freaking out because it was at nighttime, we're in the car realizing that, oh shit man, we can't drive in this condition. And then that kind of perpetuated more anxiety thoughts. And then my friend played this Bob Marley, Three Little Birds, but he played it on repeat. So every time the song would finish, it would start up again. And because it would repeat, it would kind of trigger. So it would just, still to this day when I listen to that song, I'm ugh. It puts me into that PTSD. So I was kind of stuck in a loop. But anyway, long story short, I kind of went through it was actually the most scariest moment of my life at that time, because I've had much scarier trips where I look at that, I'm that was cute. But it was more for what it did to me afterwards, because I noticed at the very get-go that I'm oh, psychedelics, they're not normal drugs. These are, they have to be respected. So my very first trip, that was one of my most powerful lessons. Okay, you got to respect this shit, and there is no way that I'm going to do this anytime soon. I think it was maybe a year or two since I tripped again.
Wow.
I've done acid before, but I never had that big of a, it was quite interesting and trippy and all that kind of stuff, but it never gave me that profound shift like mushrooms did.
So that wasn't your first psychedelic experience. That was your first time where you got a proper trip. I see.
Yeah. Technically it wasn't my first trip, but it was my first trip.
First trip. Right? Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, for real. Cause acid was again, it was trippy, it was nice, it was interesting, but it wasn't life-changing. It didn't shift my perception afterwards at all.
Right.
Whereas this absolutely did. And it was by accident as well. And I think it didn't change my life and I was depressed and then it fixed me. It's no, of course not. It just gave me a little bit more self-awareness. And I think that I still went through a very dark period. I kind of hit rock bottom. Don't really want to get too much into it, but a really dark place, just with alcohol, doing horrible shit. And then that kind of hit rock bottom, and I'm like, fuck, I got to do something in my life. And at this time I was in Thailand, and I was like visiting this Buddhist temple, and I just got something in this, I don't know, felt something in the energy that I'm like, okay, maybe there's something here. And then that kind of led me into more meditation, lucid dreaming. And then I eventually discovered Joe Rogan, like in the early days, especially those. I think the podcast that I resonated with most was with Graham Hancock and Aubrey Marcus. Graham Hancock especially, because he talked about how he had like a maybe it was like 20, 30 year weed addiction, and he did ayahuasca. And then when he went back, even after his whole ayahuasca trip, telling him like, you need to quit this stuff, he smoked weed again, and he just had this huge like anxiety attack. So he physically couldn't smoke weed anymore. I was like, wow. Because I've been trying to quit weed my whole life. And so I was like, okay, maybe there's something to this ayahuasca. It wasn't specifically for weed addiction, but I'm like, just the fact that it could help him quit he's been doing it for so many decades, and he has this one ceremony, and it just fundamentally changes his relationship. I'm like, dude, that's amazing.
Well, I was actually about to make a video.
No, go ahead.
Where I talked about the fact that like I've heard of this happening where people have an experience with psychedelics and they're instantly cured. I've never gone through it myself. Like for me, the way I always experienced psychedelics was they will show me, unhealthy patterns of the past, and then kind of show me the direction where I can correct those unhealthy patterns. But then once I sober up, I'm pretty much the same me. I've just been shown the way. And so it's really up to me to put in the hard work to make the differences. Did you find that was the same for you, or were you kind of being instantly cured of some stuff as well?
Nah, like I think that I fooled myself maybe at certain points I was cured, but of course, no way. I backslided, and I didn't fundamentally really change anything. It just gave me more self-awareness. But yeah, absolutely. I think that it's like you got to put in the work afterwards, because psychedelics, they don't, at best, they show you a window of opportunity, but you got to like walk through it. Or a door, a window, whatever metaphor you want to use.
Jump through it.
A portal, maybe.
Okay, Oh, sorry, go on.
No. I think I was just going to go on to drinking ayahuasca. Like it definitely did shift something in my mind where afterwards I was like, oh, wow, I've never felt this much peace in my life before. But I think like looking back on it, it kind of maybe gave me a glimpse of this is what you'd be like if you didn't have all that baggage.
Yes.
So maybe it was just a temporary shift just to show me like, oh, wow, I can actually be happy, because I felt like I've always dealt with like depression and anxiety and self-esteem issues and just like constantly being in this dark space.
Yeah.
And even with psychedelics, I've had very horrific dark trips.
Yeah.
Even on that first ayahuasca trip that I had, I actually thought that I opened up a portal, and I thought I was like, oh shit, I'm schizophrenic. Like I've fucked up my mind. Like
that's a very common thing I find with a lot of people. During trips, one of the ways that negative thoughts takes over is either you're going to be stuck here forever, or you're going to be insane forever. Those are the two things that really catch a lot of people, I find. Yeah.
Yeah, and because like you go into this timelessness space that it really does feel like forever.
Exactly. Yes. So with ayahuasca then, I've actually had a few people asking if I should do, or like asking me to come and do ayahuasca, but it's the one psychedelic that I've always been resistant to try. And I don't know why. Like I hear a lot of good things. I think part of the reason is I have watched your ayahuasca documentary, The Dark Abyss. And that probably turned me off a little bit.
That was my intention. Good.
Yeah. But I think it's good because, it's better that people know what can happen than just jump in and then, just freak out at the time. But
absolutely, because there are a lot of horror stories, right? So
yeah, I bet.
Like, I'm not making the thing. I didn't make this video for like, oh, I want to push people away, or I want to show the dark side. I'm just literally just telling the truth about what happened to me. That's it.
Exactly. I think
you can take it as you want.
Right now, it's kind of like with what I saw with weed. When weed was really becoming popular, all of a sudden it became like a miracle drug. And it was like, if you want to cure cancer, you take weed. It's impossible to get addicted to. It's like the healthiest thing you can take.
Bullshit.
Exactly. It was just like, we'd been lied to for so long that realizing weed wasn't what we were told it was. We were just like, oh, it must be the exact opposite. Whereas it's like obviously in the middle ground. And I think that's kind of happening with psychedelics a little
Yes.
bit, where people are like, okay,
Yeah.
psychedelics aren't this crazy substance that just makes you go crazy, like insane. So it must be the cure to everything. And it's like, it can help you a lot, but like the stakes are raised and they're put to like a level that most people have never experienced in their life. You'll have emotions to a level
Mm.
and a degree that you've just never come close to experiencing, and that can be frightening. And if you just allow yourself to get frightened on a psychedelic, then that can induce a bad trip. And I think even hearing about bad trips, like people will hear like, oh, like I had a friend who was saying to me they want to have a DMT bad trip just so that they could like test themselves and prove themselves. I was like, bro, you have no idea what you're asking for. Like, you've got no idea what you're
No.
asking for. It's just the worst pain you've ever experienced times 1,000.
It is. I've actually got a lot of people have emailed me about their traumatic experiences, and there's one guy, this veteran,
Mm.
who obviously will keep anonymous, but he said that he's been into war. He's seen his friends get killed. He's gone through PTSD, and he said that that was nothing compared to
Fucking
his
hell.
ayahuasca experience.
Wow.
So no, no
Wow.
matter what you can imagine in this physical reality, how dark shit can get, it's like, not to put it down like, oh, it's nothing, but in comparison, it can really feel minuscule into how dark things can go in the spiritual planes.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, that's the thing is if you have gone through some
Yeah,
really dark stuff on psychedelics, those psychedelics are probably going to like enhance those emotions. Like that's what psychedelics does, you know what I mean? Or do they enhance stuff? So it
absolutely.
doesn't matter how dark you've
One of the many things that they do. Yeah,
yeah, well, yeah, of course. Yeah. Um, so
but I think what you're talking about before, just to follow that thread, is like, you're talking about how, because when drugs get banned, for example, and there's such a negative stigma towards it, and then it's natural for the pendulum to kind of swing to that opposite direction, where it's like, oh, we got lied to of how bad it was, so therefore it must be the complete opposite, right? And maybe that's kind of like human nature, or the principles of rhythm or something that, I don't know, because maybe if psychedelics are so demonized, for us to even have a conversation about legalizing them, maybe it wouldn't go very well if we had this balanced, objective view. Maybe it's like we need to just only focus on the positive, so that way it kind of starts that discussion. I don't know. I'm just kind of
No, I agree. That's what it is.
yeah,
That's what I think it is. I think it's like there's so much negativity surrounding it. Even today, there's so much negativity
yeah, true.
surrounding it that the only voice that's loud enough is one that says it's a cure to all. Because if it's like, actually, it's not as bad as everybody says, and it can really like actually improve your mental health, people are like, oh, okay, whatever. But if then you hear voices of
Hmm.
like, listen, all those problems, and this is the truth, all those problems that you're experiencing that you can't find a cure with traditional antidepressants, psychedelics have a very high chance of being able to sort that out for you. That's going to get some attention, but as soon as you add in on there, well, there is this chance that you're also going to have like an insanely terrifying experience. People are going to
Yes.
there's a bit of anxiety. So it's always the loudest voice is the opposite voice at first, and then the pendulum just kind of like balances out eventually.
Yeah, and it's like one of those they're very polarizing tools, because whatever's true about psychedelics, you could probably argue the opposite as well. Like, oh, they're very good for helping with mental health issues, but I've also known
Mm.
real life examples of them making it 50 times worse,
Yes.
right?
Well, yeah, because
And you can't,
you've
and
gone
to
through that, haven't you?
disacknowledge that. Yeah, but I think over time, like, I'm one of the lucky ones. Well, you could say I was unlucky for going through that, but long term, it's like, oh no, actually, like I said, like, because the psychedelic experience in those really dark realms can make your everyday life seem like petty problems. So because I've gone through such horrific, or at the time I thought of as horrific, scary realms, now when I go through like kind of normal everyday problems, it's like, this is not as bad. Like, this used to bother me a lot more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's something that I haven't been to war, but I could imagine like you going to war, just actually seeing reality and all this messed up shit, and then you go back home and people just complaining about petty stuff, and it's like, dude, you have no idea how lucky you guys
Totally.
are.
Totally.
So, That's
Yeah.
I kind of tap into that, but I know it sounds very arrogant. Like, yes, I've been to war and I've seen all this shit, but it kind of feels like that emotionally, in a sense, you know.
Yeah. You
But at
can't
the end of the
explain it to
day,
people.
yeah. So it's
Yeah.
like it's all good. I think it forced me to, because that kind of experience, it can really make or break you, in a sense. And I would assume it's a similar thing with going through some sort of a trauma or PTSD or some really traumatic experience, where for some people it really does break them because they allow it to break them down, where other people, they use that as fuel, right? They integrate it, they become a more fuller human being, they integrate their shadow, and they're able to go further in life. So it's really, entirely up to the person and how they interpret it and how they take steps towards healing. Or maybe because some people just go to the opposite route, right? They drink themselves to death, or they just do drugs, or they just they sink deeper into that darkness. And I empathize, man. I get it. I understand that leniency to want to go towards that route. But even at the time when I was at my darkest, I'm like, man, I got to do something about this, because if I just let this consume me, then it's not going to turn out well for me or my family. So I'm going to purposely try to look at this as a positive thing, even if I go through all this suffering in the meantime. But at the end of the day, I can say for sure that I'm absolutely grateful for that experience, because I needed some humbling, for sure. Because I was chasing that. I was kind of like that, but I was always kind of lured to the darkness, in a sense. Like, I like having that story, or like facing the demons and kind of this kind of stuff. But when you actually verse something real, it's like, oh shit, I didn't want this at all. Oh fuck, I messed up. Shit. Oh no, what was I thinking? Like that kind of stuff, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
It's like someone saying to you, like, oh, like I want to have that bad trip. It's like, that's like saying, I want to be raped. I want to get beaten to death. Like, I want, you know what I mean? Like, why would you want these things? Like, if it happens to you, for sure, take it, try to use it as a positive to push you forward. If it happens, God forbid, but don't wish for it.
No.
Life is hard enough. You're going to get hard shit come to you. Trust me, you're going to die one day. You're going to grow old. You're going to maybe get a physical illness. You're going to have to deal with loved ones dying. Like, we go through hard shit as it is. You don't have to purposely seek it out, you know. But if it does come, then might as well take it as a advantage, you know. Push yourself forward.
Well, what was it? What, if you don't mind me asking, what substance was it that gave you probably the most challenging experience?
Whew. Well, but a few of them actually, like mushrooms and ayahuasca, they both gave me a similar kind of psychotic break. However, when I came out of those experiences, it was kind of like waking up from a nightmare. You're like, oh my God, it's just a dream. Whew. But I'm back to reality. You know what I mean? Like, it was still traumatic, but it was also like, but I'm back. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But it was the Ebola one that kind of, I took that with me. Like,
I remember that.
As soon as the trip was over, I was like, oh no. Oh shit, this is my reality now. Like, it was like my connection to God was completely cut off. And I was like kind of in this very... It was like nihilism, but it was even worse than nihilism. It wasn't that the universe was meaningless. It was that the universe is fundamentally evil. That's why there's good in this world, to contrast what evil is. Because at least if it was all bad, if it was all hell, if it was all burning inferno, at least you wouldn't know what good is, and eventually you'd probably get used to the suffering. That was my mindset at the time. Like, that's how fucked up it was.
Holy crap.
And I was kind of like in this, you know, this is a satanic matrix used to collect souls and all this kind of stuff. Like that, like emotionally speaking, I kind of peeked behind the curtain.
Yeah.
But that was also a very powerful lesson to show me this is what life is without God, without good, without meaning, without order. This is hell. So I was like, so I got a glimpse, and I lived in that space for a very, very, very long time. Over time, it forced me almost to become religious, in a sense. Like, okay, I need something, a higher power than what I can deal with. Yes. Because obviously human nature is so corruptible. And if I cling on to the worldliness, which is transient, and it's eventually going to fade away, I'm setting myself for failure. You know, I got to
Right.
cling on to something absolute, something that doesn't change. You know, something
Yes.
that's within you but also higher than you. You know, because I don't want to. I don't want to be God. I don't want to be the highest of this hierarchy and kind of really. So what? It's just me. Like, that's kind
Sure.
of lonely and egotistical in a sense. So I was like, I didn't like that idea,
Right.
and so it kind of forced me to go towards meaning, purpose, love, goodness, humility, all that kind of stuff. All the opposite of, you know, selfishness, loneliness, evil, darkness, etc., etc.
Okay. So
So it was
what?
like a very powerful
Sorry.
lesson.
Yeah, I
You
bet.
know, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it
That
freaking
was
sounds like
pretty
it.
much it.
Yeah. What was it though that like inspired you to go towards the good? Because I know for me, like I've definitely been, you know, psychedelics have kind of taught me the power of positive thinking, as lame as that sounds. But literally
No, it doesn't
beforehand,
sound lame.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
beforehand it was like I was in a similar situation to you. I was playing games all the time, didn't feel much motivation,
Hmm.
was definitely a nihilist. And so my first glimpse of meaning was through psychedelics, and the, you know, the meaning behind positive thinking. And I don't know if it was without psychedelics, if I ever would have learned the tool of positive thinking. So was it because of those experiences through psychedelics that you're kind of inclined to, you know, think positively and work your way out, or is it just like something else beyond, like something that you'd never experienced before?
Uh, like I think fundamentally, for sure, there's a I believe there's a greater plan at play. Like
Yeah.
even if it wasn't for psychedelics, I'm sure I would have found my
Right.
way,
Right.
no matter what.
Yeah.
But that was just so happens to, you know, it's even like when you read a good book or a friend just says that one thing that kind of shifts your mindset and puts you on a different path. Like you could say
Mm.
like, oh, if it wasn't for my friend, but it's like, but there's something deeper
Sure.
going on. You know what I mean?
I feel that as
Something
well.
that
Yeah.
moves through your friends, something that moves through these psychedelic experiences.
Yes.
Because even though I've had all these profound psychedelic experiences, not everyone has those experiences. Because I remember
Sure.
first going into the psychedelic community and being like, oh my God, so this is like a community full of enlightened beings and all this kind of stuff. And then as I get more involved, I'm like, oh, a lot of these guys are fucking just druggos using
Yeah. Yeah.
psychedelics as an excuse to
Yeah.
be enlightened. And there's actually a lot of narcissism. You know what I mean? So I was like, oh,
Totally.
I thought that my experience was normal. You know what I mean? I just
Yeah.
assumed that, but
Yeah.
apparently not so much. It depends on how, like, the framework and context that you use them. You know,
Yeah, it's
but
strange. Everyone is different because it's like I wasn't in a good place, yet psychedelics helped me. But you know, I wasn't taking psychedelics alone. I was like basically hanging out with drug dealers at the time because they were the only guys who I could talk to about drugs. And it
of
didn't affect
course.
them, you know, yeah, as we do. And it didn't affect them the same at all. You know, like to them, it was just
Mm-hmm.
like a painkiller. And I was literally like, when I
Mm.
when I started talking
So
to,
weird.
yeah, I know. And I think it really was their belief of like what it could do for them that definitely affected them because like I was also starting to listen to Graham Hancock, yourself, Adam. And so I was starting to get a idea that there was more. But at the same time as well, I think I'd never heard of you guys and or anyone kind of using it spirit like for spiritual reasons, and even so, I still had that like kind of had that experience to begin with. So yeah, it's strange. It really is different for everybody, and a big part of it is the way you use it. Because I did end up hang out with one of those drug dealers in particular, and I started to change the way he was using it, and he did have like a proper, you know, experience with it.
Mm.
But at the same time, yeah, sometimes it just doesn't work no matter what. Yeah, it's very strange like that. My brother actually he was addicted to meth for like a year or just over a year, and was going like insane. Like he was calling me up at work, like asking for help because he was trapped in the upside down world, and you know the monster was going to
Oh
come kill
shit.
him if he didn't kill somebody. So it's getting really intense. And you know, eventually I took him out of the house he was at, and he ended up in like a mental hospital. So he was off of meth for a while. And as he was coming out, he was very lost, but his mind had still been opened up by meth to a different dimension. It was just a very dark dimension. And he'd been using like weed his whole life before that, and he knew I had weed. And he asked me if he could smoke some. And I said to him, I was like, all right, listen, you can smoke some weed, but if you're going to smoke some weed, this is how you have to do it. And I told him basically he has to go into his room, turn all the lights off and meditate. And that's how he has to smoke. If I'm going to give him some weed, that's what he has to do. And he kind of just like ignored me. He's like, whatever, bro. Like, just give me some weed. But I guess I'll do it. He did it and he had a full spiritual experience. And he just like was seeing like God on a wheel looking at him. He came out of it and smoked DMT after that, had a pretty good experience, but we didn't have much DMT. And then he became a Christian. He's been Christian ever since.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know.
It helps a lot of people, I suppose. Like I was kind of going down that rabbit hole for a while because like every time I go into something, I'm like very open to a new belief system. So I'm like, all right, for temporarily, let me just suspend my belief and just assume this is true and then see where this rabbit hole takes me. And then sometimes I'll take some principles, and then I'll move on or whatever. But yeah, this like that can help some people. You know, not everyone needs psychedelics, but it's like like a tool. Like if you use a chainsaw, for example, you can use it to chop down a tree and build a house, or you can use it to cut your own limbs off if you're not careful with it.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Psychedelics is like a much more powerful tool than even a chainsaw. So
yeah.
But it can also be very even like, you know, you're talking about your brother smoking weed and having this spiritual experience, and I've been smoking weed for, well, I've quit now. I used to smoke weed for about 18 years, right?
Wow.
So I've smoked a lot of weed, like a lot of weed. You know, I've interviewed Tommy Chong. I've gone through all these parts of the world, these weed cultures. Like I was neck deep into it, but I never got that. It was always toxic for me.
Right.
At the end of the day, even when I take all those positive experiences of opening me up, this and that, at the end of the day, it led me into a road of, I don't know, just apathy, I suppose, and cloudedness, and not having clarity and not living my purpose, even though it gave me the illusion of living those things in the short term. Because I've gone through the cycle so many times where I'd quit weed, and then I'll start again, and they'll be like, oh, it's giving me all these amazing things again. And I was like, oh, but that's the bullshit addict.
Right.
For me personally, right? Like, before people get all, you know, because people get very defensive. You just sharing your experience, but that's very telling on where you are, because some people are so threatened by the identity that when someone shares their story, even though I'm not saying anyone to do anything, I'm just sharing my personal relationship with it. But it also goes to show how different individuals are, right? And how we react to certain substances.
Yeah. I think
so it's like
I was
very, very fascinating.
I was similar to you, because I realized I was addicted when one night I just couldn't get a hold of weed, and it was like the worst night of my life. And that's all it took. I was like, holy crap, like this is, I look like a meth fiend right now. I'm so desperate to get weed. And I didn't realize it could even do that. And even then, I didn't want to admit to myself that it was a problem. Like even then, like so much of my identity, as you're saying, was wrapped up in it that I was like, just to say, like I've been telling everybody, you know, psychedelics are amazing. They can help you. They can heal you. For me to just admit that I'm addicted to weed is an actual problem. And, you know, at the time, I wouldn't say I was ever really addicted to psychedelics as much, but I hadn't learned to integrate them. And so because of that, I was kind of relying on them. So I was close to being addicted to them just to get that kind of feeling of clarity. And you have to be honest with yourself when you're using these substances, because there is always this sense of clarity, and there's always this sense of like, I have my life together when you're using them. But if you always rely on them for that, then of course they do end up becoming an escape for everybody. And it's difficult. You have to put in a lot of hard work. If you actually do get a message from psychedelics, you do have to listen to that message. And it's not easy to integrate it. Otherwise you would have integrated it when you're sober. You know, you would have just done it already.
Oh, absolutely. It can be very difficult to integrate. And I used to think they were like anti-addictive. I didn't think it was possible to be addicted. And because personally, I've never been addicted to psychedelics. And for me personally, they have had an anti-addictive property. Like the last time I tripped was like 2 years ago. Yeah. Even though I allegedly, of course I wouldn't, but let's just say in this alternate dimension, I might have some mushroom chocolates in the fridge that someone's eating. And I was like, I'll be like, yeah, I'm going to trip this weekend. And then months and months would go past because I'm just like, I always feel like this trepidation, which I guess is a good thing, right? So I never, I'd hardly, so for me personally, I don't have a psychedelic addiction problem. I can easily go years without it, because it's
Yeah.
I need to work on what I've seen
Yeah.
because it takes some time. But sometimes I feel the call, sometimes I don't. I'm kind of like unattached to it. Like if it comes and it's meant to be, then all right, let's rock and roll. But other times when it's like, all right, work. 'Cause sometimes I feel like the best thing to do is just like work on your business or exercise or work on your diet.
Yeah.
Or like you watch Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Clean your room,
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
But just like simple shit like that, you know what I mean? It's like
yeah.
though like we want to go into like the spiritual dimensions and talk to spirit guide and be enlightened and look at all these really abstract concepts instead of just like, mate, fucking shave your face, mate. Have a shower.
Sure.
Like it's like it's just simple shit, Get a haircut. Like that. That might seem so superficial, but the physicality of this reality is a reflection of the inner world. So sometimes even just shaving or just cleaning your face, having a cold shower, like it's so simple and mundane, but it does have a profound spiritual effect. You know what I mean?
100%.
Or just cleaning your surroundings, or like telling the truth, facing like, saying that thing that you've been holding on to, maybe certain resentments that you've had towards friends or family members, maybe just like let it out,
Yes.
It's like things like that that we avoid.
That's
I include myself, so
yeah. That's a big part of like the psychedelic integration is realizing that you can bring a lot of those awesome feelings you feel and that freedom that you feel when you're on psychedelics into this world. Just because, I mean, I agree. At the time when I first started using psychedelics, I didn't realize that, and I literally just wanted to like meditate on psychedelics for the rest of my life. Like I remember just thinking that would be the ultimate pleasure for me. But I had a trip eventually that just showed me that like literally you can bring all this stuff down onto earth. Like you're in your body, you're experiencing this reality for a reason. And just integrate these messages into your life and you can have those feelings. It's definitely, I think that's the most important lesson. I mean, I'm like you, I haven't tripped for a very long time. And I think a big part of that was towards the end of my psychedelic trips, or at least I haven't tripped a lot for a long time. I've done like microdosing experiments and stuff like that. But the last trips that I was starting to have, it was so profound, man. Actually, it was pretty crazy. Like, I think I still remember it clearly. The very last powerful psychedelic trip I had that was a part of this psychedelic journey, because there was this period in time where I was literally like tripping a lot. And then I had this one trip on DOB, which is like psychedelic amphetamine. I'm not sure if you know about it. It's pretty awesome. It's like acid. It's LSD that lasts for 16 hours. That's basically what it is. And
LSD's too long as it is.
I know. The guy who dealt it literally told me, because it had DOB written on the top of it, and I'd heard about it online, and I was like, I know about this drug. I'm not sure if I want to take it yet because it sounds pretty full on. And then this guy was selling acid like a 2-hour drive away, and I was like, stuff it, I gotta get it. He tells me they're called date of births. I look at it, I see straight away it's DOB, because it has like on the back of it 1,400 milligrams like typed into it. I was like, oh, well, it's too late now. I've got to buy them. So bought them and took them. And it was a powerful trip. It was a very powerful trip. And like I meditated on it, which just took it to that, that next level. And I remember as I was coming out of it, I was like, I'm not where I want to be. Like, this isn't where I want to be in life. And I am receiving the same messages, and I think there's going to I'm not embodying these messages in my life. And before I trip again, I'm going to make a rule with myself. I'm going to have to achieve this, this, and this. And once I've achieved these 3 things, I'm going to, that's when I can trip again. And I remember at the time, I'd always see the machine elves whenever I tripped, no matter what. And so they're all like, I could feel them like in the walls.
Machine elves,
those bad boys, and they're all like chanting to me in the walls. And
I've never seen them.
Oh, true. They're pretty. I have a feeling they're the same. Like a lot of people see them, they just like interpret them differently or like call them something else.
Okay.
Yeah, but for me at the time, like I always felt like the TV would speak speak to me when I was tripping. It was like I would receive messages through the TV, and there was like the episode of Frasier, and it was like the last episode of Frasier, and he was on the TV, and I used to watch that when I trip all the time. And he was like saying goodbye. He was like, it's been a great time, but it's time to say goodbye. And I just felt it, and I was like, yes, this is like the last trip for a while. And I don't think I ever saw the machine elves again. That was the last time. And after that, I did go ahead and get those things that I wanted to accomplish done. And as soon as I did, I was like, I don't really want to trip. Like, I just want to continue getting the more stuff done. Like, that was kind of a great feeling. I want to do more. And that was it. That was the end of my, like, this period of using psychedelics all the time, because I started just getting that satisfaction of actually getting my life together. So.
Yeah, because we can use it as an escapism. It was like when you were talking about how, you'd love to just meditate on psychedelics, and that can be your life, that kind of ascetic monk life where you just escape the matrix and go off and do your own thing and levitate into nirvana. Literally. And maybe, there is a place for that, I suppose. But I think a lot of people, especially in the Western world, especially like kind of white dreaded chakra hippies, they do it out of a lot that I've known personally. Even myself, because I'm speaking for myself as well. I think I did it out of. I'll just speak for myself, actually, instead of other people.
Sure.
For myself, I was kind of going down that path out of, in a way, in like narcissism, but also escapism, because I didn't want to integrate with this matrix. I didn't want to have to play the game and do all this kind of stuff that I didn't want to do. I just wanted to be out in nature, man, and and if you want to do it and do this off-grid thing. Okay, that's cool, but you still have to work through the matrix, build money, build a sustainable business, have all these systems in place, learn to speak with other human beings, build a community. Like, there's all these things that you have to do to go off-grid anyway. And then what is off-grid? Like, can you really completely go off-grid? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe you can.
I mean,
if you can, please let me know. People in the comments. I'd love to know.
To a degree, but
it's a dream of mine to go off grid, but I've had to accept also living in the matrix. I think there's a different path for everybody, but a lot of us get a calling to help people as well, and I think it can actually inhibit your spiritual journey when you involve yourself with other people and try to help other people, because you do get a little bit sucked into stuff. But that's part of it. You know what I mean? It's in the same way when I used to trip, I would try to think about what I was experiencing just so I could articulate it for when I made a video, you know what I mean? And I'm sure that held me back a little bit. Yeah. But at the end of the day, that's what you got to do to help other people as well. You got to be involved with the mess. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, because I used to beat myself up for it's like, hey man, like, people listen to you for your trip stories, and you should, like, I don't think it's healthy to trip for a video specifically, but it's like, since I am tripping anyway, let me just get some insights. But I would also be careful, like, sharing them too soon. Like, make sure you keep it for yourself, because as soon as you let that air out of your mouth, as soon as it's done without actually integrating, it's like you almost lose that integration process. That's what I kind of learned for 100%. Myself,
Yeah.
So they're pretty much like with that Bufo video, I waited a year before even posting that video.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Just to see in case I changed my mind on it. Now, I'm not saying you should wait a year after every trip. Would be very unsustainable, but for this particular one, because it's very intense, and it's something. Yes. This is one of those substances that some people, have this life-changing experience, and they put it on a different level to any other psychedelic they've done. And I would agree with that. I for sure it was the most profound one that I've had personally.
Wow.
But I've also seen people have profoundly bad trips on that as well. And there is some physical dangers to it. So,
what did you experience yourself on the 5-MEO DMT?
I know it's a cop-out to say, like, there's no words for it. But even, like, when you smoke DMT, like, when you go through the hyper tunnel and all these these indescribable fractals and entities, and you're going through this different space, and you're like, man, this is impossible to explain. That is, like, elementary compared to the ineffability of 5-MEO DMT, because at least with DMT, it's like it's very complicated to explain, but if you did have the language, you could kind of describe, because you're still seeing things in space and time and fractals and beings and all this kind of stuff. Whereas with 5-MEO, it's like you go beyond that. You break beyond space and time. So there is like really no way to use language to accurately describe it. Even DMT, this is the case, but for 5-MEO, it's even more so. But the best way I can describe it is like, I had the overwhelming sense that I kind of went back to source, like that place that we all come from and where we all go through death. And it was kind of, but I also had, because I think your belief system really paints your interpretation of your experiences, because some people will have 5-MEO and be like, I'm God, everyone is God, you're God, I'm God, this is God, I'm God.
Yes.
But when I had it, I was like, oh, okay, I must have gotten washed over by God's energy or presence or essence or whatever, but I still felt like, but I'm still a human being. I'm still Tom.
Right.
I live on planet Earth. There is a connection. There's like it's a paradox, right? It's like a divine paradox, but it's also, because some people will have that experience and then be like, oh, I don't want to leave. I want to live in that space forever. Whereas for me, it was like, even though it was the most amazing, blissful, profound experience of my life, as soon as I went back to Earth, I was like, oh, thank God I'm back here, though, to see organic matter, physicality, human beings, food, fingers, you know, all this kind of stuff. But my identity definitely got dissolved. Yeah. In the strongest sense of the word.
I think there's something interesting about the source consciousness, which is, I think, so I experienced something where it was like basically complete like ego dissolution, becoming like source consciousness. And it seems like it's beyond duality as well. It's absolute eternity. It's like everything, which is nothing. And that's outside of time as well. And once you go beyond time, you're out of the realm of like explaining things. But it seems like there's people going to this place on different substances. And that's what's so amazing about it, because it even sounds similar to near-death experiences. And yeah, that's why that's really what makes me most interested about psychedelics, is the idea that
breath work. Some people, you can go into those spaces if you go far enough, if you push yourself. Because most people can't. Like I stopped the breath once. I get the cramp and the tingling, and I'm like, okay, that's enough. But you got to like push past that. And the thing is, like with natural practices, it takes a lot of work. Because psychedelics, all you have to do is, that's it. That's the only skill required. Yeah, exactly. Well, for myself, I don't even want to say that, because a lot of people that because I went to a retreat, and I'm actually going again next month to the ayahuasca retreat where they also do bufo ceremony. So I've seen a lot of people take it, see the reactions. And the first time I saw it, I'm like, there is no way I'm doing this. Hell no. Right. But then the owner kind of convinced me at the end, and he gave me a private ceremony. So then I was like, all right, if I get my own private ceremony, I have like all these facilitators, and I'm like the center of attention. Maybe it's a narcissistic thing, but it's also, I don't want to trip with other people who might freak out or me feel self-conscious. Like, that's a big part of it. If I'm going to do that, I just want to be in my own space, especially for something as profound as this. But some people, like, they have very different reactions. Not everyone goes to that place. Some people, they scream, they laugh, I've heard stories of women having, like, men too, I'm sure, having cosmic orgasms, things like that. So dope. It's weird.
Yeah.
I just don't want to paint my experience as if it's like super common, because it might not be. I don't know.
Right, totally. So, and even on the drug itself, like, it's like, I wouldn't say expect to go there. Like, I got spiked with 5-MEO DMT, and I certainly didn't go like as deep as yourself.
You got spiked?
Yeah, I did, man. I was working
who the fuck spikes people with 5-MEO?
Bro, and I knew he had 5-MEO DMT, and I was at a party with a whole bunch of strangers around me. No one was tripping. This is this was like some famous musos party, or like up and coming like musos party. All these like chicks around, and I'm like trying to make a good impression. And this guy I worked with, who was like an assistant at my workplace, he like hands me like a vape pen, and I knew he had 5-MeO DMT. I was like, this isn't like 5-MeO DMT, is it? And he's like, nah, bro, it's not. I swear, it's just cannabis. I was like, oh, okay, smoked it. And like, I just wouldn't accept that it was DMT. Like for the first 10 seconds, it's kicking in and it's kicking in hard. Like, I'm feeling like crazy
Oh
things.
no.
And I'm like, man, this weed is strong. And then he gives it to somebody else and they start like freaking out next to me. They're just like flipping out. And as soon as that happened, I just realized, I was like, oh, this is DMT. And I've been spiked with DMT. And yeah, off I went. So
That's messed up.
I know it was pretty stuffed up, big time. And he just like fled. He just ran away after that.
I don't promote violence, but some people really deserve some physical abuse. Just some sort of like a reality check. You're like, dude, you don't do this, man. Like, if you gave that to the wrong person and they go to like a mental institution the rest of their life, like, I kind of think of, even if it's a 1% chance, you got to be careful. You got to like, it's spiritual rape, really. That's what it is.
Totally, that's a good way to put it.
Like, you got to consent to that shit.
Yeah, no, it's 100% true. And even these like videos, like I do disclaimers on TikTok, and that probably helps me not get my videos taken down. But I also do mean them to a degree. Like, no, I do mean them. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I don't want somebody to take a substance because I had a positive experience and then they have a negative experience. Like, I love Adam for what he's done
that's my, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I love Adam for what he's done for the psychedelic community. But I remember he made this video where it was like 3 tabs, or he was just like acid versus alcohol. And I watched him do like 3 tabs and he was just like juggling a ball. And then just like, he seemed more with it than when he was drunk. I was like, 3 tabs should be nothing then. I should be able to handle it. And I ended up running through the streets naked that night. You know what I mean? Wow. So yeah, it's that you got to be careful with the messages you put in out for sure.
Absolutely, not like trivialize these things. And that's why it's like a nice mug. Yeah, it's a tricky line to cross, because it's like, as you make videos about psychedelic, and I don't limit myself to just making psychedelic content. In a way, I have psychedelic content, but deep down it's actually more about spirituality and self-development or philosophy or whatever I want to talk about. I just use psychedelics as a bait, in a sense. I don't trick myself into thinking like, oh, I'm a psychedelic channel, therefore I must take all these drugs on camera. I talk about them 100 times more than I take them. And I see a lot of young creators kind of fall into that trap of like, oh, I must trip all the time. It's like, mate, the people who go down that route, I've seen a lot of them, and they end up losing the fucking plot, man. Yeah, they end up losing their minds.
Yeah, I bet.
Especially when you tie in your identity with, I am this person who trips. Like, eventually you're going to get humbled, you know? So you got to be careful with that.
I'm glad we had
can
this
talk about something without doing it. Yeah, me too, man. Yeah.
No, well, because I was gonna say, it's like I think Dakota was going to an ayahuasca retreat or something like that, and his friend Davey was saying I should definitely come and do ayahuasca, but I don't really have that calling to do ayahuasca. But and literally that, like I love the guy, he's hilarious, and he's telling me like, you are a psychedelic channel, man. He's like, come, like, I'm not saying you should trip for content, but you should come and trip for content. And I just feel like I'm just like, once you're in the trip, it doesn't matter how many followers you have, it's freaking trivial. It doesn't matter where you're at in life, all of that is trivial. I don't want to be there.
No, you got to feel the call, because like for me, it's DMT scares the bejesus out of me. That's the psychedelic that gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Ah, interesting.
Ayahuasca, it's kind of like a 50-50.
Wow.
Because it puts me in a similar, because it's like almost like an elongated DMT trip, right?
Yeah, so well, that's why I'm like,
because of the context, it kind of, you know, facilitators, it's kind of a safe space. I like the shaman music. I kind of like that indigenous vibe, but it's also scary as hell, especially when you're in the Amazon. There's a lot of energies, a lot of noise in the backgrounds, you know, a lot of alluring, like I've heard stories of like the jungle calling out to people like, come.
Oh my God.
People just walk out to the jungle like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like the jungle, of all the natural environments on the planet, is the one where you could easily just descend into madness, like without any drugs at all, just being lost in a jungle, having no sense of direction.
Yeah.
You just hear those stories of just like losing your fucking mind, you know.
No, 100%.
And then you add psychedelic to that. It is scary. I know that I'm not like convincing you to come, but it's also but you don't have to. It's true though. You don't have to trip. You could even come to an ayahuasca retreat and like interview people or a shaman or learn more about it. Like actually, you don't have to trip. Just
I was thinking about
rid of that program.
Yeah,
you don't have to trip.
I was like,
I'm going to make a. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think I was going to say the same thing as you. I would love the idea of doing like a doco or something like that. Because I just got like my camera that I use has just been approved for Netflix. And I was like, oh, well, fuck yeah. Like, may as well try and take advantage of this thing. And,
what do you mean it got approved for Netflix?
They have like Netflix approved cameras. And you have to have
which camera is it?
The FX3.
Oh, the Sony.
Nice. Yeah, the Sony one. Yeah.
You got a good one. Nice.
Yeah, it's a great camera, but I just don't take advantage of it. It's like really frustrating because I love film. Like I've always loved film, and that's one of the frustrating things about this channel is like I would love to, like at the moment I'm kind of doing a script for like what I believe would be the most accurate like portrayal of psychedelics I could possibly make, but also I'm trying to make it into a script that would like, you know, it's not just for the sake of that, like it actually works into the story. But it's like I see this camera and I just want to use it, you know, like I just want to get using it right now. So maybe that's something I could do is I could you know start trying to make documentaries for psychedelics.
I'll trade you my A7 III.
A7 III is still a good camera.
not Netflix approved though, is it?
Well, they're kind of picky. I don't think it is, but they've got like very specific like specifications. It's not necessarily the quality. Like my camera, the FX3 wasn't Netflix approved until it had time code, and then they approved it, which is just like so you can sync it up with mics and stuff. Like there's very little things that they look out for.
Interesting.
Yeah, but
I'm a bit of a I want to because I get a bit obsessed with like cameras and lenses and all that. All the technicals of that kind of stuff.
It's fun, man.
But then sometimes, like, wait, dude. But sometimes you get sucked in so much that it's like, dude, I'm not even creating. I'm just getting obsessed with gear, and it's like, mate, just fucking film, just record.
Yes, yeah.
It's like Gary Vee, you just gotta film content, man. 5 pieces of TikToks, NFTs, bro.
I know.
It makes me feel like a failure. I'm like, 5 pieces of content a day, man. Like, holy shit, I struggle once a week.
He had a dude on his on a stadium, and he was talking to him. He was like asking the guy, "How much content do you make?" The dude was like a video a day, and he's like, "That's not enough. That's why you're not like succeeding. You got to do 4 a day minimum." Like, I don't know how they do it. I think maybe there's different ways people upload because I swear it's impossible. Like even if I had the whole day just dedicated to making a video, like if you get it to a standard that you want it to be. You need a
team, man.
Yeah, you need a team.
Or the way he does it, it's like, you got to leverage your time, man. Just focus, you know, make a podcast once a week and then just make 10 content.
Yes, but that's what he does. Yeah, that's what he does.
I can't do his voice without sounding like fucking Mickey Mouse. Content! It's like, oh, man. Too much.
No, I know.
But yeah, you got to film content, man. You got to fucking get on it.
Yeah, I got to get film. I got to do more creative stuff. I think I definitely don't. I'm not a big fan of how psychedelics have been like represented in mainstream media so far. Like they're always the drug that kind of ruins things.
Doctor Strange did a good job, even though it wasn't psychedelic.
Yeah, like
it wasn't. The context wasn't him tripping, but. That was DMT for me. That was like, holy shit. That is very accurate.
And they knew, like, there's little Easter eggs linking to psychedelics in that film. So like they definitely know that was based on the psychedelic experience. But they're not like no one's really. There's more to it than visuals and stuff I find as well, and that's just the hardest thing to translate. You know.
That's what I try to like every once in a while, every blue moon when I do make a trip simulation, I try to kind of capture the emotion stuff, because then you have some purists be like, oh, it's not hyper realistic because of the visuals. I'm like, yeah, but I'm trying to make an experience, you know, trying to make a cinematic experience here. I want you to feel something.
Yes.
And I'll just get people, you know, it's like you outsource. You're just like, well, I'm not a VFX artist. There was a time when I'm like, oh, maybe I should learn how to do this. And then I started getting into it and I'm like, nah, fuck this. There are people who are just way better at it than me. I'd rather just be the director. So we actually are working on one with the guy. It's a Irreality. So he helped me do the LSD one.
Yeah.
And he actually went on the retreat with us for Turkey, which is awesome. And he did the VFX for Spider-Man: No Way Home. The Sandman scene.
I know. I'm talking to Irreality too.
Yeah. So we're cooking something up together.
Yeah.
So
he's talented.
I'm excited.
The visuals he does are
absolutely
super accurate. Yeah.
And that's the thing. As a creator, you got to put your ego aside sometimes, because I think sometimes we want to do it all ourselves, but there are people who are better at you at certain things. You just got to find what you're good at.
Yes.
Whatever that may be, and then collaborate with other people who can do a better job at that thing. Because then if I was to learn VFX and try to do everything myself, it would take forever. It would never get done. And it wouldn't really be very profitable at all, Not that it's all about profit, but at the same time, this is a business. So you got to learn to somehow live off this sustainably, Where is this going to go in the long term? What happens if YouTube deletes your whole channel? What are you going to do then? You got to kind of prepare for that. And I've been a bit too comfortable in that, in that YouTube bubble of just I make just enough to kind of pay my rent and stuff like that. So I'm just going to cruise. But then if you cruise too much, I just picture Gary Vee always if you're not growing, you're regressing, man. It's oh shit, all right.
Yeah, totally. And that's what I feel as well. It's crazy how, as soon I remember when I started TikTok, I had a very low aim for subscribers. And I was if I achieve this level, I'll be satisfied. And I remember I achieved it relatively quickly, and it went a bit past that. But I didn't feel the satisfaction I was hoping to feel. It just got to more stress. And I was okay, fuck. Now I've got to turn this into something else. How the hell do I do that? So that's where I'm
at.
It's
the process, right? Not the goal.
Yeah.
Because no matter how much you reach, even right now, if I was to think, it'll be pretty awesome if I reached a million subscribers, even 100,000. When I thought that if I reach 100,000 subscribers, I'll be set, right? But that is absolutely not, especially when things progress. You got to constantly do work to kind of try to stay relevant in a sense. It's you want to make, it's that fine line of making content of what people want to see, but still something that you feel a personal connection to, and not just retrading the same shit over and over and over again, because your audience grows eventually, and so do you.
Yep.
So it's all the creators who have the longevity are those who are able to, I don't know, take their core audience along a ride that they enjoy, but still try out new things. So that's kind of the phase that I'm at, trying to move on to that next step, I suppose.
Where do you feel you're, not that you have to say or anything like that, but is there anything that you've kind of done at the moment that you're really enjoying? You feel you could do a lot more of in the future?
In terms of making certain videos, or?
I guess so. Maybe a direction that you take your channel in. Maybe a direction you take your channel in.
I think with your mate Tom, I've kind of tried to just make content whatever I want to make content about.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's satisfying creatively to me, but sometimes it can be horrible YouTube decision, because it's your audience is what the fuck, what is this? I didn't sign up for this. I subscribed because of this.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, I interviewed a fundamental Christian on a psychedelic channel. That is unheard of, right? Sure. That got me so much hate, because I was I want to know what's this guy's perspective.
Yeah, that's surprising.
And because I'm not challenging him, I'm because I'm very agreeable in podcasts. I'm okay. Because again, I'm not threatened. I don't need to prove my belief system and why you're wrong and this. It's no, speak your truth, man. If I was to interview a serial killer, I'd be so why do you think killing people is...
Sure.
Interesting. Okay, I'd be very... Or a Ku Klux Klan member, so black people, huh? You think they're inferior? Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah, continue. I just want to know their perspective, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm not putting a Christian on the same level as a serial killer or a Ku Klux Klan member. I'm just using a very extreme... Because there's actually a lot of things in certain religions that I do agree with, principally. That I think there's a lot to learn from anything. But anyways, that got me a lot of hate. I got two call out videos actually. One calling me a transphobic, homophobic, a fascist. The guy talking about illegal drugs.
Crazy.
And I'm always against the government enforcing their fucking control on the people. I'm so against that shit. And you call me a fascist because I interviewed a Christian because, I don't know, whatever, because they think that homosexuality is a sin. Therefore, they hate gay people. Therefore, I'm talking to this guy, which must make me. Yeah. Therefore, I hate gay people or whatever it is. It's like so silly, right? Yeah. And then the last video I made, I interviewed a ladyboy in Thailand, which must obviously go against that. And they're like, and it threw people off. They're like, "What the fuck? What is this? I didn't subscribe for this shit."
Right.
And so I'm trying to find a line of like experimenting, trying new things, but also trying to keep that core audience. And this is, there's a lot of experimentation, but I do have a new channel, which is already, I don't like to share plans unless I've actually taken steps towards it, but I've already gotten like 4 videos up and ready. Like they're unlisted. Oof. And I'm just making 1 or 2. So this is going to be more of a personal channel, which is going to be more towards, kind of like travel, creativity, but also mixing kind of self-development, like stuff that I would kind of do on my channel now, but just removing myself from psychedelics and religion and kind of like the more controversial that I don't like to talk about it. I also just want to, spread my wings and do more other shit like culture and find a more specific audience for that. So that should be coming out in the near future.
That's gonna be freaking awesome, kind of
enjoying. But I also do like I love talking about philosophy and religion and spirituality. Like that's the stuff that I kind of I get a lot of passion over. Like when I talk about it, I kind of light up and I get I get invested in it because it's like super fascinating for me. So I kind of try to intertwine that with the psychedelic stuff, which kind of leads into this sort of topics anyway.
Yeah.
Because if I was just a psychedelic, like if I was only talking about like the pharmacology and psilocybin actually acts like a serotonin and neurochemistry and yes, this scientific study peer reviewed, blah, 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 blah. Like that's like ugh.
Yeah.
Like I like learning the basics of it, but like how do I relate it with everyday reality?
Yeah. For me, it's pretty much philosophy.
Really, really boring.
Yeah. It's like that I love talking about philosophy, and pretty much psychedelics is the bridge to that. It's just like a trippier philosophy, and you kind of go a little bit off of what you can prove, but it's so much fun to talk about. But it sounds like you've had a pretty strong, like almost religious path as well. Like it seems like you've at least learnt about quite a few other religions. I've always been curious because I haven't done a lot of religious research. Yeah, but what I have,
theology is like that next level. Like that's where philosophy comes from.
Right.
So anything that you're learning about philosophy, theology is like that. That is where that shit comes from.
Well, I heard Jordan Peterson.
It was just a natural rabbit hole.
Yeah, I heard Jordan Peterson put it in an interesting way where he's talking about the fact that we're literally living like a low resolution version of the Bible. Like our current morality is a low resolution version of the Bible because it all stems from there. And so if you want to just get the HD version, you just read the Bible. Every epiphany you're having is actually you just coming close to realizing what the Bible has already established. You've just got like pattern recognition software in your brain, and you're kind of like, oh, this is good. This is the moral thing, but really it's just because you're recognizing the trend that the Bible set centuries ago. Like it's thousands of years ago. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah. But it's like these patterns that repeat itself over time.
Yeah. I was going to ask, do you believe that the psychedelic experience is linked to, theology in a major way? Like a lot of people think that it's actually what inspired theology. Are you under the same impression?
I used to, but I'm not sure. Like maybe the newer ones. But for example, like you got to look at like the Bible, right? You look at the foundation of what the Bible is, which is the Tanakh, right? Which is Judaism, the Hebrew Bible. So that's where I've actually been going lately is kind of learning theology from Jewish rabbis who actually understand the original scripture in the original language, not a translated English version that have been kind of changed over time.
Right.
But from what they believe anyway, I don't know, I'm not going to make any claims, but what they believe, that it's like a divine revelation, in terms of like the Jewish people had this experience of God where there was like a million people, like the Ten Commandments, the Mount Sinai, and everyone experienced this really profound moment in time in history. Whereas every other religion on earth, it's always basically based on one person. Like even Christianity, a lot of the Holy Trinity doctrine was based on Saint Paul, who had this experience. Or the Buddhism is based on the Buddha having the experience telling people.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
all these other ones. It's always based on just one person and his subjective experience.
Yeah.
Whereas the original Jewish people, they kind of had this national revelation. Like imagine being with all these millions of people, and then you feeling, seeing, hearing God, and seeing all these miracles. Like it's just, there's no room for doubt. Like I could imagine anyway, because I don't know. I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but these are the claims.
Yep.
And that's what kind of separates it in a sense. So and to put back on the psychedelic stuff, it's just, I don't know, because these are people who kind of carry their traditions. Like they're very orthodox in a sense, where they just pass down these traditions over generations and generations and generations. So I feel like if psychedelics was fundamentally a part of this religion, then how did it get so lost in a sense where it's nowhere to be found in the Old Testament?
Yeah.
And yeah, you could use like, burning bush was an acacia bush, but like I'm not a scientist, but I'm pretty sure if you just burn an acacia bush and breathe in the
I've always wondered that.
You ain't going to speak to God.
That's what I thought, yeah.
You know, and it says very clearly in scripture that the burning bush, it was like, it had flame, but it wasn't consuming the bush. You know what I mean? So that kind of like, so it wasn't normal fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe there isn't a lot of, especially like pagan religions for sure. But for this particularly, I don't think so. Maybe in some forms of like Catholicism, and there's definitely something there for sure. But I don't think that it's like a fundamental part.
Right.
I don't think you have to take psychedelics to connect with God, because I think in these theologies, when you take psychedelics, you're also opening yourself up to the spiritual realm. And that opens yourself up to the worshipping of false idols, which is like one of the highest commandments, right? Is not to fuck with the spiritual realm, in a sense. I'm not saying that therefore psychedelics is that's more of like a fundamental Christian view. I don't agree with that. I think it's a lot more complicated than that, because some Christians will say that psychedelics are demonic, and then they'll drink alcohol. And it's like, dude, like, yeah, all right, it might not be as profound as psychedelics, but you're still opening yourself up to something. Like that's what pharmakeia is. It's technology. It's any drug, medicine, or anything, you know? So it's like, it really depends on how you use it. And are you using it to worship Satan or to worship God? You know, like, wouldn't that make a difference? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just like shooting the shit here. I don't know. There's so much mystery surrounding this. So there's still part of me that's kind of trying to figure it out. But
what sort of power do you think these psychedelic entities have then? Like I remember you made a video with the guy who invented what was it? Changa. Yeah. And I think the video he was talking about how to ward off like evil entities and stuff like that. I haven't had much experience with dark entities. I had one experience, and for me, I always got the intuitive feeling that they like exist in a realm of fear. That's what I always kind of felt intuitively. And so I was like, if I, encounter a psychedelic entity, just don't give it any fear. But do you feel like if you go into these realms, there's actually a potential for them to like come back into this reality or something like that? Like, I know there's a lot of people who are scared of that.
A lot of people seem to believe that. And it's not just like Christians or the religious people, but it's also even a lot of the Aboriginal people here, like the ones that I've talked to. They actually believe that all psychedelics are just straight up demonic.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And that they open you, then they're not like Christian at all. So I'm just using a different group, not to put. It's like, it's only this one group who thinks that. It's like, no, there's many cultures, religions in the world who have a similar sort of viewpoint. And I do agree for sure, because your mindset plays a big part on whether you're feeling fearful, whether you're going to attract that kind of stuff. And that kind of goes even in the schoolyard. Like if you come to school and you're like really fearful and hunched over and like really scared, you're probably going to attract the bully more. right?
Yes.
But then on some other sense, just because you have no fear doesn't mean you can't get hurt. You know, like if I go
Right.
2 o'clock in the morning walking in, I don't know, fucking Colombia, Bogota, in the middle of the night, and I'm like completely fearless. I'm on MDMA. I'm loving life. I'm one with reality. Does that mean that I'm not going to get robbed or stabbed? Or maybe not.
I wonder,
Maybe there's some
actually.
part of
Yeah.
me that will
Yeah.
avoid, but
I wonder.
it's not
I'll just,
impossible.
I'll just quickly start the recording if you want to continue it. 1 second,
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
Sorry. We're talking about whether or not, I guess, entities have power over you if you don't give them any
Right.
fear. Yeah.
I think that giving them fear definitely gives them more power, for
Yeah.
sure. And like if you look at, let's say, the even the Jewish view of what Satan is, for example, because the Christians will believe that, and I'm going to tie this all up with, you know, dark entities and giving that power and all that kind of stuff. But this is the way I think about it. So the Christians will believe that Satan is an enemy of God, right? He has his own free will. He rebelled, took over Earth, etc., etc.
Yep.
But the Jews believe, especially if you read like the Book of Job, Satan asked permission for God. He's like, "Hey, can I fuck with Job and throw him all this hardship and all this kind of stuff, and see if he'll still have faith in you and all that kind of stuff?"
Mm.
So I kind of look at
Wow.
Satan. Well, the Jews look at Satan as a fundamental servant of God. He has no free will at all, and basically, the most that these dark entities can do is tempt you to do something.
Right.
It's when you take certain actions, that's when they can get you. And you know, assuming that Satan is like basically the prince of all these dark entities, right? He's the head honcho apparently. I don't know, but
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I've definitely felt I've had experiences with some sort of like a king arc entities.
Yes.
And like
Yeah.
Satan is probably the best way to that I would describe it, because I think even if you're Christian or Judo-Christian or not, if you grew up in the Western world, it's part of our software. You know
Right.
what I mean? So we're going to understand, we're going to relate with the symbols told in the Bible more than we are in the Bhagavad Gita. You know what I mean?
Sure. Totally. Yep.
And so maybe they're just useful symbols to use. But I kind of think of that, like I used to give them way too much power, and I absolutely agree that when you do give in to their fear and you give them way too much power, they do seem to have a more strong hold on you. You know, like
the thing is,
when I would, yeah, go ahead.
No, well, I was going to say, sorry. The thing is, I've always had that intuition because I did meet this dark entity that said it was Satan when it kind of revealed itself. Do you know what DXM is?
Yes, cough syrup.
Cough syrup,
Right.
yeah. So what it's like a dissociative, so very similar to like ketamine or something like that. When I was in my early psychedelic phase, I was doing a lot of dumb shit. Like I was just doing reckless stuff, didn't care about my health at all. So I mixed a high dose of acid with quite a bit of DXM, and then just started meditating, smoked some weed and started meditating. And I was pretty sensitive to psychedelics. So for me, it was like a pretty powerful trip. And it just threw me out of my body completely. And I remember my voice like completely disassociated from me, and it just started talking to me like somebody else. And eventually I just like appeared in this red room, and I remember the voice was like so clear to me. It was like, do you want me to show you black magic? And I was just like so like far gone. I was like, yeah, sure, show me. And next thing, this intense like black square just like starts appearing, and it's like spewing out dark energy, and it's just like forms in front of me. And I could just see it was like powerful. It was wicked. It just seemed like this primal shape. And the voice was like, now that you've seen this, you can never go to heaven. And at first I was like, holy crap. I was like, what have I done? And then I was like, no, I was like, you're an entity that's trying to invoke fear in me. And it just like clicked. I was like, you're trying to give me a bad trip by making me afraid, be full of regret. You're trying to invite me into negative emotion. And when you think about it, it's like the vampire has no power in your home unless you invite it in. And so I was like, okay, you know what? Like, I see you. I see what you're doing. And I just started laughing at it. I was like, you're weak, bitch. You got no control. Try again. and it was gone. Like it left, and I was, I was fine. I had a fine trip. And I often get asked if I ever like think about what I did, if I actually don't think I'll be able to go into heaven or whatever. But I really think they work through lies to invoke fear. I've always got the
All they
sense that
do is lie.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
fucking
exactly.
junkies. They live on deceit and deception and
Exactly.
lies and fear and all that kind of stuff. So you never. That's why I don't trust entities. Like I never take it for its word. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
Um, and at the end of the day, like your soul is only God's.
Right.
So no entity can really, like, you can't sell your soul to the devil because it's not yours to sell in the beginning.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah.
And once you kind of tap into that power of like, oh, you can't touch me, like, even if you kind of tap into the story of even Jesus going down the depths of hell and just like all the demons just bounce off him, and maybe I don't know who Jesus was, right? I don't know if maybe he was God in the flesh, maybe he was the Messiah, I don't know, but it's a very interesting symbol that people use, from what I've heard anyway. I haven't had this experience personally, but a lot of people who aren't even Christians, who will have like a really dark experience or a demonic attack, and they'll just kind of say the name of Jesus. And
I've heard this as well. Yeah. Yeah.
So again, I can't confirm this with experience, because there was one time where I tried to call out to Jesus because I was panicking. I didn't know what else to do. And I got a voice saying back, it said like, Jesus ain't gonna help you here, pal. I was like, oh fuck, that's all up to me. Who knows? Maybe I didn't have enough faith. Maybe it was because I was like, I'm sure a Christian would say something like, he didn't show himself because he knew that you would have the strength to show up, or maybe he'd show up in a different way. I don't know. There's always kind of mental gymnastics. It kind of gets a bit headfuckery, but
it does. I've heard it works for some people. It has to be like a belief system. That's a massive part of it. You know what I mean?
You got to believe it. Because for me, it was like, Jesus.
What's that dude's name?
Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't like I wasn't committed, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just, it has to be a belief system, right? You can't just say something. It's like trying to say positive affirmations without having the emotional weight of belief behind it. It's
100%.
just not going to be as powerful,
100%.
It's like the fuel to the fire.
Yeah. No, my brother actually trips at me on one of my DMT trips once, and when he was like fully Christian, and he was convinced at that point that the machine elves that I always met were demons. And so he said, like, he was like, all right, here's I'm gonna play some like music for you, and it's just like Christian praying music. And I'm not like, like, I'm open to religions and stuff, but I'm definitely not like exclusively Christian by any means. But I chucked in the headphones, listened to this track, and it's like, somebody doing tongues while praying to God. And it's freaking awesome, bro. Like straight away, it just like, I felt like I'm going through the clouds. And then the machine elves came. The machine elves aren't always, even though I call them the machine elves, they're not like machine or elves. Mostly for me, I actually see them as like glowing white light, silhouetted beings. And they came up and they just started doing a little operation on me. And it was really crazy. There was a male, there was like two males and a female. And the male put his like hand on my forehead, and then his other hand on my heart once he was done. And then they all just like ascended and went away. And then as soon as I opened my eyes, my brother came up and put his hand on my forehead, his other hand on my heart, and just like stood there, just like praying over me. I was like, wow, it's so fascinating, the spirit world and how it links with ours. But there's definitely, I think when you go to like church and stuff like that, if you have like an open mind, there's definitely like an energy there. Like there's this high vibration. They're all chanting. They're all positive,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like a spiritual shower. Because I go to church, especially during I think shortly after the pandemic. Because if I'm going to get into something, it's like, all right, let me just get into this Christian thing. Let me start reading the Bible. It's important for history anyway. I think we should, whether you believe, it's so important to understand,
right? In
my opinion. And so I'm like, all right, let me try this church thing. Let me actually start getting involved in the community. And that kind of lasted a while. And I definitely do agree that there is a kind of high vibration there. Like you do feel cleaner, better.
You do, yeah.
Feel more motivated to do good.
Yeah.
There is definitely something very powerful there, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame. It's been kind of corrupted with like a lot of the dogma and all the rules, and I would say the homophobia and stuff like that. Like it comes from an old time, so it's like it's hard to judge them, but it's just a shame, I guess, almost that they won't kind of like adapt a little, because I think there is some truth there, like there is in most religions. That's really beautiful, and for me, reminds me a lot of psychedelics.
Mm. And that's
Yeah,
like the biggest religion, like Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. But
yeah,
I think from their perspective, from what I understand about them not changing and adapting, it's like, yeah, but God doesn't change. Like God is
yeah. Oh,
absolute. So
yeah.
all
I,
His
I wouldn't expect
principles,
them
like,
to.
what are we supposed to? What are
Yeah,
we supposed to change our belief system because of what we think in this
yeah.
specific time period of what
Of course.
society thinks? So in a sense, it's like I commend them not to change, because if you change,
Yeah.
then it's like you're basically corrupting your own principles.
No,
I'm just trying to put. I'm just playing devil's advocate or
no,
God's
I agree.
advocate. I don't know. Whatever.
I agree with you, because I think it's like whatever our interpretation of the spirit realm is right now, it's based on our leading technology, the cutting edge language we're using. 1,000 years from now,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to evolve and the meaning's going to be totally different. What I mean more is like there's like I think there's a fundamental principle there, and
Mm-hmm.
the way it manifests itself evolves, because like back then it's like trying to explain, as you were saying to me, I can't explain 5-MeO DMT through language, and here's
Mm-hmm.
Jesus speaking through language, talking to non-enlightened beings in order to enlighten them with a language that derives from a non-enlightened state. You know what I mean? It's like
Which still
it's
echoes today, right? Like our
it's
whole,
still
even our year is based on his freaking after
yeah,
death. Like
yeah,
that's
yeah.
fucking pretty profound, man. Like,
No,
that's
it's
how we
totally
reference time.
insane. But I also think it's like it's a bit naive almost to assume that our interpretation of what Jesus said is 100% accurate. You know what I mean? So I
Oh yeah,
think
no, that's silly.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
then there's his followers, his disciples, and then our interpretation of what they've laid down is one more person in between the Chinese whisper game, and it's always kind of been like that. Then, so
And
I always
especially
take
because of how that's why I've been kind of going to the Jewish point of view, because it's like I think with a lot of these events in the Bible, it was like written maybe at the earliest. The Book of Mark, I'm pretty sure, was written maybe 80 to 90 years after all these events happened,
right.
and then the Council of Nicaea, who put the holy doctrine and the Bible together, was written like 300, 400 years later.
Wow, wow,
So it was a lot of time. Whereas in the Jewish scriptures,
yeah,
there was a lot of prophecies, right? It was like written down. God said that this is going to happen. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years later, that shit actually does happen. So there's
wow,
like a track record,
wow,
right? So now I'm been trying to think like, there is some, and even the Christians and the Muslims agree that the Old Testament is the Word of God. So all three
right,
religions believe that it's true, but obviously some do their own thing. So it's kind of interesting to look at it that way, and because it's like it's weird because Judaism is kind of like it's like a religion, but it's also like a race at the same time. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's like
yeah,
a bloodline. So it's like I don't know. It's very strange. But I get this whole Chinese whisperers, and it's like, man, I wish I was there just to see
yeah.
what actually
How
happens.
amazing!
Because
How amazing!
that's why it's the language change that does affect a lot. Like I speak Spanish, and there are certain words like, okay, yeah, this English word translates into this in Spanish, but there's a little
Yeah,
there's a little something that's missing.
no,
You know what I
it's
mean? And I
it
think
shapes the
over
way you
time,
think and everything.
exactly. So I
Yeah,
think that if we really want to understand the Bible, everyone has to learn Hebrew.
yeah, yeah,
Which is
yeah,
obviously that's going to be a mission. I've actually
yeah.
started learning a little bit. I was like, yeah, I like to learn different languages just to kind of exercise my brain a bit. But
Good, yeah,
I was like, yeah, all right, let's just get to the, because I want to know. I just want to cut through the bullshit. I'm just like I just want to cut through the nonsense.
yeah,
What was actually said, and all this kind of stuff. Because so many things get twisted. I don't want any contradictions. Because if, let's say, the Old Testament or the Tanakh, or the Jews call it,
yeah.
if it is the word of God, there cannot be one single contradiction in that entire Bible, right?
Wow.
That's pretty fair. That's pretty fair to say, right?
I'd say so, yeah.
If it's the word of God, there cannot be, and
Yeah.
his principles cannot change over time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a long book, a lot to get into,
But there's some pretty like hectic stuff back then though. Like I feel like they've got like some harsh punishments for like you know, kids who are acting out and stuff like that.
yes, I know.
Yeah.
That's why I want to interview. Because it's easy for us to read that and be like, oh, see, that's fucked up. That's primitive.
Sure.
It's like, hang on, why don't we actually just interview a rabbi and see if he has a logical, reasonable explanation for this? Because maybe there is. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm
sure they would have addressed it somehow.
Phases.
Yeah.
We're just we're so easy to quick to just shit on this thing because it's like, there's this one thing that my immediate mind doesn't agree with, therefore it's fucked up. But then when it comes to whatever else they believe in, like, I don't know, psychedelics, for example, like, yes, it's God's gift. And then there's all these stories of people having psychotic breakdowns. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't count.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I think also there's a fear there as well, like fear of what it means if it is true, if there is more truth to it.
And if it is true, that changes everything, doesn't it?
It does.
I've contemplated, I'm like, man, if this is true,
yes,
that's, I don't even know. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm in the I don't know, because I'm very open. Again, I'm always like, with every religion, like I went into Eastern religion first, like, you know, listening to Alan Watts, Buddhism, Hinduism. I didn't get too much into. I personally don't resonate with it, and I've been to India a few times, but there's just something about it which I just don't resonate with. You know, it's like some people like play different games, different genres. Some people like strategy games, and some people hate it. It's like, nah, I don't like these kind of games. I'd rather just shoot people, you know, or whatever. Yeah, so I kind of feel like that sometimes.
Yeah. I probably imagine I would have connected with Zen the most, but I've got a Bible that I want to get through now as well. I'm kind of like tempted to just like take some acid and read it though. Like I've always heard that's a cool thing to do. Always wanted to do that.
Me too.
Yeah,
I would like to do that too.
Yeah,
I'm like, all right, if psychedelics are demonic, then Jesus, come right now and tell me otherwise, or I don't know, some shit like that.
I really don't think they are. Anyway, I really don't think they are.
No,
I think that
I think they can be, but anything in life, you know, social media can be demonic. I think any technology, if you use it wrongly, can be demonic in a sense. And demonic, if you kind of define it as opening you up to a dark world which influences you towards destruction. Okay, let's just use that for a moment. Like social media can be demonic. Alcohol can be demonic. Watching TV can be demonic. Hanging out with the wrong person can be demonic. Eating shitty food can be demonic. Like so many things can be demonic. You know what I mean? Yes. So it's like just to put, because that's always bothered me too, and I've always tried to reconcile this. I'm like, okay, I even consider like maybe psychedelics are demonic, but it's like, but how could it be? How can they be demonic if they influence certain people? Like, let's just assume Christianity is true. Jesus is a Messiah. Yeah. How do some people have a psychedelic trip and then become Christian?
Exactly.
Like, wouldn't by definition it couldn't be demonic if it leads you towards Jesus?
I was way against.
I don't understand.
I was closed-minded to religion and Christianity and all the rest of it before psychedelics. Like I wouldn't give them the time of day. And then I had a trip and I was like, oh, I think there is some truth to this stuff actually. So I
was anti-Christian, bro.
Same.
I would argue with fucking Christians.
Same.
So, and same to me. Like I think psychedelics, it was like that first step of opening my mind up to kind of all these different ways of thinking. And I was like, wow, I understand why religion exists now. Absolutely. Right. There has to be a God.
Yes.
It's like a no-brainer for me, you know?
Sure,
like It went from like, oh, yeah, maybe,
yeah.
To like, oh, yeah, absolutely. 100. It's like, there's no doubt in my mind that there's absolutely an intelligent creator of sort, you know, some sort of a source. I don't know what that is exactly.
Yes.
But I know that there is something bigger out there for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'm not going to, I know some skeptics might even listen to it. It's like, all right, prove it. Prove that there is God. It's like, so it's like you want me to prove in time and space that a being that transcends time and space is here. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like me, I don't know if we just talked about it. It's like creating a video game space and trying to find the programmer within the simulation. It's like you're never going to find it. At most, you're going to find the fundamental ones and zeros. But because you're stuck in a certain program, you can't actually get out of it.
Yeah, so exactly. And it's like we're using like we're arguing with language, and it's like, oh, you're like, God doesn't exist. Well, you're kind of saying your definition of God doesn't exist, but maybe my definition of God is something that you believe in. Like we just call it
Yes.
something else, you
We're
know?
going to be careful with definitions, exactly, because I know God
Yeah.
has a very heavy baggage, and I actually avoided using that word for that exact reason. I might call it
Right.
source or
Yeah.
whatever, but then I'm like, wait, but then if I just change the word, then it just confuses the fucking landscape. Let's just whatever got me originally speaking, which is just the creator of the universe. That's how I kind of that is how I define it, but I don't know who that is exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if a certain religion has the right idea about it, I don't know.
Yes.
But I definitely resonate with the idea that there is a creator, of
Do you,
some
when,
kind.
when you say creator, do you think it's like a separate, like sentient thing, or just like no idea, just like something that creates?
I definitely feel like I have the sense that it is like a personal being. Like it's not just some impersonal force.
Yeah.
Just the fact that there is just the fact that we have personality. Like where would
Sure.
where would that even derive from? So maybe there is a small fractal piece there, but I don't know. I just, in terms of creator, I just mean that there's a source
Yeah.
creator, sort of similar thing.
Yeah.
Is it separate? I kind of follow the Hermetists' view on this, which they say that like the all is in the earthworm, but the earthworm is far from being the all. So it kind of talks
Yeah.
about this
Yeah.
divine paradox of there is something beyond the universe. Like the universe isn't God itself.
Right.
It might, like, God's essence is embedded within every single particle on this earth, but it's not
Right.
the particle itself. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
beyond that.
Yes. I remember having
So
a
I kind of agree with that line of thinking, but I also
right.
don't think that God is just some impersonal, like some impersonal force. I think it
Yes.
does have some sort of, like, God cares in a sense. Like it cares if
Sure.
you do this versus that, but it will allow you to do that, right? Because that's what love is. Love is
Yeah.
from choice, freedom. That's what free will comes from.
Yes.
Well, that's
Yeah,
what I believe anyway.
no,
We have to have freedom to do bad if we want,
right.
and we have to choose to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just going to be robots. Like if
Yeah.
we were just programmed to do the right thing all the time, we'll just be fucking
It's not good then.
mindless slaves. No one wants that. That's not true love.
Yeah. No, I believe in a soul. I believe in free will from the soul because of that. And I understand all the contradictions there, and I get it, but
Yes,
it's
me too.
yeah, it's a feeling thing, you know what I mean? And that's why like psychedelics are so cliche, because the messages they give you are like the things that you hear in the cheesy romance comedies and stuff, you know what I mean? Like
Love thy
is the
neighbor,
answer, all that stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
it is though.
Exactly. But it's beautiful, and I do hold to it that that's true. I think that, the truth is good, and like all that stuff. Love is truth, and all like positivity. It's all
Yes.
related to the good stuff. Like it's a very religious belief that I hold because of that.
Yeah, well, even evil or darkness, for example, it's not a thing in and of it. Like this is what the Hermetists believe, and also even in Orthodox Christian theology. I'm sure Judaism. I'm not sure. I'd have to do further research in Islam, but they
Yeah.
believe that darkness or evil, it's not a thing in and of itself.
Yeah.
It's actually a privation of good, because
Yes.
even in Genesis, what did God say? Creation, I created the earth, and the earth is good, or creation is good. So everything in creation is fundamentally good.
Yeah.
Evil is like, it's almost like you have this bottle of water. Let's just say this is good. Evil would be like a crack in it
Right.
to allow the water to squirt through. But you
100%
can't have
agree.
the crack without the bottle
Sure.
that exists in the first place.
Yeah,
Same
that's
with,
exactly that's exactly
darkness
it.
and light.
That's why I'm like
Darkness is an
I feel like
absence of light.
it's illusion. The truth is what is there. It's real. Illusion takes you away from truth. It takes you away from something. I heard a great example once. I can't remember who came up with it, but it was like when you take a photograph of something that's close to the truth, and then you take a photograph of that photograph, and you keep repeating that process, and you just get more and more static, and you start seeing more and more darkness
Mhm.
appear. And it's like, that's not something that was actually photographed. That doesn't exist, but it's just appeared within it. It's like it's a dilution of truth. That's evil. That's what they were saying. So Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And that's why,
Exactly. Like
that's what,
diseases and viruses can't exist without a host, right?
yeah, exactly. That's
Like
why in these,
that's a kind of natural thing of evil. But yeah, go ahead.
right. I was just going to say, that's why in these psychedelic trips, I always hold, like, if I'm ever in a point of difficulty, I always hold true to this, like, the messages of everything is okay. I'm always okay. Nothing can harm me. Like, I am like love. I am like the most cliche stuff. I
Hmm.
repeat it, but I always feel safe with that. Like, I feel like I can go very deep in these trips and be okay as long as I can hold true to that. And as long as I don't give into
Yeah,
fear,
like you
basically.
trust the process and
Yeah.
make sure, like as long as you're honest with yourself. Like for example, if there was some sort of experience that made me question, like, maybe there's something fishy here, to
Hmm.
just ignore that instinct feeling and to continue going down the path. That's when maybe things can get a bit dangerous.
Right.
But it's
Yeah.
just about staying honest with yourself, you
Yes.
know.
Yes. That's
Because
very
sometimes
true.
your soul know, like there's a conscious conscience within us, you know.
Yeah.
There's that part. It's like not even just your mind. It's something that goes beyond that. It's something deep
I know.
when you
It's
just
true.
know.
It's weird,
And
eh?
sometimes, and when you ignore that, bad shit happens
It's like
every
an
time,
instinct. It's a
100% of the
spiritual
time.
instinct. Yeah. Like
Yes.
I would have like mushroom trips and like I would see like they were like sirens or something. They were like these sexual, it was like sexually alluring. And then just some like
Yes.
entity just came up and was like, you don't want to go there. Let's go over this way. Trust me. And I was like, oh, but you sure? They're like, yeah. And then I got the sense. I was like, yeah,
Exactly.
there's something there. It is a little bit dark. Now that you've mentioned it, it does feel weird. Even though on the surface it looks awesome. I want to dive in. There's definitely this weird feeling there that just feels off. It's so strange. So strange.
And you know when to back away, because I feel the same with
Mm.
certain entities. I'm like, all right, that's enough. 1.5 meters, please.
Yeah,
Keep on walking.
yeah, yeah. No, exactly. That's why I've always like myself trusted the machine elves because I get a lot of people who tell me, how can
And
you trust them? They could
yes.
be demons lying to you. I'm just like, I don't know. I get that, but at what point do you just say, like, you've got to trust yourself, you got to trust your feelings. Otherwise, I can't trust anything. How can you trust Jesus if you're going to question things to that degree? You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
and especially if there's if even in the Bible they talk about false Christs, right?
Oh,
That
really?
Christ, like they could be false Christ that comes, like there could be beings that come to you in the form of Christ, but it could be a demon. So it's like you can
Oh,
always
yeah.
use that logic to question all your experience, and it's
Exactly.
good to have. I think the Orthodox people, they had something interesting to say about prelest, which is spiritual deception,
Mm,
and how to really test if what you're coming across is demonic or from God,
mm.
is that is over time, is your pride growing or are you becoming more humble? Are you becoming more
Wow.
loving or are you becoming more egotistical? So if whatever you're
That's great.
experiencing, if over time, but you have to be objective about it, like maybe have some good friends to say
Yeah.
like, hey man, have I been becoming more of a douchebag lately? Have I been becoming more prideful or
Yeah.
egotistical? And if you have, then whatever you're experiencing spiritually is probably not good, even if you feel like it is.
I love
So
that.
that's from their perspective, but I really resonated with that. I'm like, yeah,
I do
no,
as
that's a
well.
good one.
Yeah.
That's a good measuring stick to see
Yes.
if a thing's fishy. Because some people, you kind of see these spiritual cult leaders who have all these spiritual experience. I believe they're enlightened, but then you see over time, like they start to get dark eyes. They'll start to physically form in a sense and kind of look like he seems to be like very up himself. You know what I
Sure.
mean? So
Sure.
that's the stuff that I'm terrified of. I don't want to, because we're all subject to pride, right? It's
Mm.
within human nature. So it's like those are the things that I look out for. It's like, is my life practically being better? Am I more loving? Am I more at peace? Am I being more humble over time? So those are the things that I
Mm.
kind of like to look at. But it's also hard to subjectively measure these things yourself because you might think like, yes, I'm becoming more humble, but you're actually becoming more egotistical. So it's like, this is why community is important, man. That's why like going
Yeah.
off to go on this enlightenment journey, it's like you can just believe in your own bullshit. This is why we need each other. We need family. That's
Yeah.
why I think family triggers us so much because they know you. They actually know
Yes.
you in a
Yes.
sense. And so it kind of triggers you. It's like, shut up. Shut up. I'm not like that anymore.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
But you kind of are, you know?
Yeah. 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 And your
Yeah.
actions always speak louder than your words. Like you always get the sense from these guys that they got to tell you who they are. Eventually, it just proves
Yeah.
itself. You don't have to say anything. Yeah.
But I guess it starts with the belief system, like you got to almost like
Well, true.
fake it till you make it, in a sense. Like
Yeah.
you got to talk with the positive affirmation, even if you're still the same person with this toxic behavior patterns.
Yeah.
You got to start with the mindset first,
Yes.
and then let those new belief systems seep into your subconscious. Eventually, that starts manifesting in certain habits that you do, and that compounds over time. And then eventually, you actually are the person that you believe yourself to be, or who you want to be. It's like 100%. A work in progress.
Yes, 100%. Yeah,
and discipline.
And a lot of that. I remember I know I could see the Dragon Ball in the background. When I was smoking weed in the early days, I was watching Dragon Ball Z. That shit was just phenomenal. I had never seen it before. First time I was on weed. I've never experienced pleasure from watching anything like I did watching Dragon Ball Z on weed. It was phenomenal. Yeah, it was
nice.
I've got like this bubble in my mind where it's like the Dragon Ball Z experience, and then just like if things get close to it,
it's transcendent. It is a transcendent religious experience.
It is. It really is. Sure. And yeah, I honestly, that stuff shaped me. Like, as kind of like lame as it may sound, like I don't know, like it inspired me, and it was this game of like you fake it till you make it, and it was a combo of the psychedelics and like watching shit like that where you just like you get inspired by it to push past yourself and push beyond what you are. But yeah,
it's overcoming limitations and pushing through your struggles, and
exactly.
Besides all that kind of stuff, you just push yourselves, right?
Yes,
and you reach these levels that you never thought were possible. But it's always a lot of these new transformations. It's done because of like some really important dire situation, like their family being in danger, or maybe their best friend died, or just something like that. But it's always about that love and community and protecting that which you love. Like you can't do any of this stuff without people. That's why we got to like really, I don't know, like we've got to put an importance on community and not just the individual. It's like both, right? It's like a dance between the two. Like you work on yourself, your individuality, but also the community, and you give back. And then it's like a feedback loop. And same with all the spiritual stuff. Like to say that, like even like, oh, this physical reality, it's just nothing. It's just some illusory matrix. But it's like, how did you even come to that perspective? How would you come to that perspective without a human brain, a physical body, to be born from a woman's vagina? Like none of these spiritual perspectives would be possible without any of this corporal reality. So you got to be very careful with just sweeping it under the rug, like, physical reality. But it's like these are manifestations of spiritual principles,
Yeah. Even the way you look at it is like the way you look at things, like referring it to a matrix and stuff like that. That's because somebody in your community has defined it that way and then shared it around, and then it's become an idea that you've adopted. You can't escape community.
Creation is magic, man.
Yes.
This is fucking amazing. Even this fucking plastic bottle, like, do you know what this... So much shit in the cosmos had to happen for just this to exist.
I know.
And for it to contain water that you drink, which sustains you. And then I'm like talking to you, but really it's like ones and zeros, but it's so like weird, going across. Oh my God. It's amazing, man.
It's a beautiful world we live in.
The Matrix is beautiful.
It is. Exactly.
Don't let it control you.
But not enough people say it. The Matrix is beautiful. Yeah, exactly.
It is. I love it.
Yes. Well, we've got 5 minutes left, and I think I could probably keep going on forever. So it's probably a good time to call it. I'm sure you got plenty of stuff to do for the rest of the day. Tom, I appreciate it. Yeah. I appreciate you so much coming on this podcast, man. It was a pleasure and honor chatting with you. I'm glad we finally got it done. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, likewise, man. I live for these conversations. This is what like pushes my buttons, and it's not conversations you can have with your everyday average person. So it's like nice. You can just kind of let loose and kind of explore these ideas, but without too much dogma, So, exactly. Man, I had a lot of fun. This was awesome. You'll have to,
great.
Yeah, let us know when you post it up, and I might even post some clips on my channel, because I feel like there's a lot of interesting stuff here.
Yeah, no, this was...
So we'll keep in touch, brother, for sure.
Yeah, thank you, brother. And hopefully we can do it again.
You're going to teach me the TikTok game.
Yeah. Well, obviously, once you get a TikTok, we can do some clips on there, and I can link it to your account.
I feel like I do have a TikTok. I just haven't put much on it. I feel like a grandpa. I'm like, oh, what is this TikTok? How do you use this thing?
Yeah, I literally wasn't even watching TikTok when I started making TikToks, but I kind of get it now a little bit, to be honest. Like I get sucked into a little TikTok rabbit hole every now and then. So,
Yeah. Okay.
I can't.
We'll have a chat about it. And I'll be more than glad to share some YouTube wisdom.
Yeah,
but I need to. I don't want to be that grandpa who gets left behind. I thought TikTok was going to be this. I was going to rise and die immediately, but according to Gary Vee, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
and he's never. I don't want to say never, but I don't think he's been wrong when it comes to the opinions. He always says he's always on the forefront of these things. So I was like, okay, I'm going to listen this time.
Now that I'm getting involved in TikTok, I can see it growing. I think it's just like a heavy dose of information very quickly, which you think about it is pretty efficient. So it probably is going to keep on growing.
And whatever you create for TikTok, you can upload to Instagram Reel and YouTube Shorts. So it's like really you're just doing work for one thing, but you're getting 3 platforms, right?
YouTube Shorts is only a minute long though, isn't it?
Yes.
It is. Okay. Yeah, I thought so. It's
TikTok's annoying. Longer, isn't it?
Yeah, TikTok you got up to 10 minutes at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I'll just do less than 1 minute videos. Good practice for myself. Yeah. Anyways, just to get some short zappy content because I'm the opposite. I could make like this podcast now. You know, we could talk for hours and hours and hours. Like this is easy. Exactly. It's actually making content that's less than a minute. It's difficult for me. So it's like a muscle exercise. You know,
especially when you're a perfectionist.
It's a good learning experience.
I can't wait to do it, dude. We'll chat about it anyway after recording. But thank you again, man. And yeah, I'll talk to you in the future. Oh, and did you want to just share your account details before I leave?
So my account details, like for Instagram and TikTok, is your mate Tom.
Okay.
3.
All right, cool.
Just let me quickly double check. Das un segundo, por favor. Freaking TikTok. How do you use this bloody TikTok, mate? Oh, it's just like so fucking. It's a social media. I'm just like, man, I just want to, because I'm a YouTube guy. I could just be. YouTube is my education, my entertainment, my job, my creativity. Like, I'm happy with that. Everything else is just like, okay, it's your mate Tom official.
All right, your mate Tom official. Cool. I'll make sure to include that for the clips then.
All right, man. Awesome.
All right, dude. Take it easy.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. See you then.
You too.
Bye.